The perfect winter break project is a play set in honor of the pinnacle of girlhood, Barbie Nutcracker. It's Girly Pop's first Christmas movie, and so of course my daughter's been watching it and she loves it. We were playing with the princess in the Popper playset I made last December, and I realized I need one for this movie as well. So we made a very intricate play set, including a box to store them in, even though I already made Nutcracker and Clara in Peg People a while back. I saw this fun jewelry box at the craft store a while ago. It has a mirror in it, so I didn't know quite what I'd use it for, but I knew it would come in handy eventually. I thought I could use the mirror for this project and it could be like a fun little ballet studio, and then I thought all the dolls could fit in these compartments. Though eventually I decided they wouldn't fit like that. I like my boxes to be storage, but also interactive, so I thought this little divot could hold a scenery, a little set piece that could flip over, and it could be like they were performing the Nutcracker ballet. I measured very carefully all the way down the sides, because you never know if these are not going to be square or not, and then I cut it out of a very, very thin piece of basswood. This will be that scenery. When I cut wood like this, I score it several times with my knife before finally cracking it off, and then I have a nice even cut, and I don't cut my fingers off. Once it fits perfect, I prep the rest of the box. Now, usually I take off all the hardware so that I can paint. This box was unique in that it didn't have any metal hardware, no hinges or anything like that, so I just took out all of the wood pieces. This includes all the dividers inside that would keep those dolls from fitting well. One of the dividers, however, is what keeps the lid open, so I replaced it with this little bar, and I thought, oh, it's just like a ballet studio. Then I got to painting. I needed to prime the wood so that I could paint it all and it would end up smooth, and I used gesso here. Then when I finished painting it white all over, I put it where all painted things go to dry, purgatory. In the meantime, I started work on Clara, who is a peg person taken to max level. Unlike her peg counterpart, I wanted her to have a real hair and posable limbs, but she is a base of a peg person. I thought I could also make some more regular peg people as the children and stuff, but I got tired, so I didn't do it. Clara is also made of floral wire. I double this up and use it as her limbs. Now the Sugar Plum Princess will be posable and can hold her ballet poses. Usually I like to leave my peg people with the natural wood as their skin tone, but considering the Nutcracker is going to have that, I thought Clara could have paint. I painted all of the necessary pieces, including some of her arms and legs that were beads. Clara, as the Sugar Plum Princess, has this beautiful white dress with glitter on it. So I did a base layer of white, but unfortunately my best glitter was a little bit sticky, a little bit dried out, but don't worry, I have grit and determination, so I made it work. Unlike every peg person that has ever come before her, this Clara will have real hair. I put some plastic around her head to make lace for a wig. Then I hot glued a bunch of yarn in little tufts moving forward so that when you flip the hair back over itself, you don't see the hairline. I repeated this process all the way around the hairline, always pushing the tufts forward, and then I styled her hair with a little bit of hot glue after filling in the rest. After the hair was completely styled, it was time to give her a haircut. And don't worry, I've been watching all of those curly girl haircuts on TikTok, so I'm completely qualified to do this. I thought about separating the ply of the yarn or curling it actually, but I liked this lock look. It's very dollish to me. Then I cut a slit up the lace and was able to pull the wig off. I did have a little bit of hot glue melt through and stick it, but don't worry, I pulled it right off and it kept its shape. Then I trimmed around and cut off all of that extra plastic so it was nice and wiggy. I think this yarn is cotton, not acrylic, which is pretty lucky considering I didn't know if hot glue was actually the correct thing to be using on this. But before I glued the wig down, I needed to add the face. I made sure to add some nice dark eyebrows. We are not doing the Ariana Glinda thing. And then the eyes are closed because it's elegant and also because it's the least creepy way to draw a doll face. Clara does have a cutie little booty and we painted that pink along with her white tights and pink slippers. Ballerinas on point have very long looking feet, so I made those beads just as long as the rest of her leg pieces. Along with her real wig, I wanted her to have a real dress, so I cut out this fabric and did some circles. I think it's like 100% plastic, so I just lightly sealed the edges with a candle. Or maybe I didn't, depends on how dangerous you let me be. I very handily had these pieces of tulle. They were actually ribbon off of some presents that I had. The pink was wide enough to cut into circles, but this white I gathered with a needle and thread. I sewed them in layers together to make them poofy up like a tutu. And upon further reflection, I probably should have done the white on top of the pink so it looked a little bit more pale pink, but as it stands, I put the darker pink on top and it looks a little bit more 12 Dancing Princesses, but that's fine. I like that movie too. I put a U-shaped piece of floral wire through the skirt and into the booty. Because I did this, I was able to lock all those pieces together. I wanted all the beads that were the arms and the legs to move freely, so I actually only glued down the very last pieces, the feet and the hands. I've got a bead for the thigh, a bead for the calf, and a bead for the foot. And of course, I just secured the last bead with a bit of hot glue, because what else was I supposed to use? It was working well for me so far. I did the same for the upper and lower arm and the hand, although Clara in the Nutcracker has these cutie little thingies on her arms, so I made sure to add those. I didn't know how I was going to attach the upper body to the lower body, so I sat there for a while and then just decided I'll do hot glue and cover it with ribbon, and it totally worked, so we're good. And since unlike the legs, the arms did not have a cutie little U-shaped bend, I decided to add a little more glue in the center for them. By the end, she was bald and beautiful, and her limbs totally posed. I was worried about the hot glue, but it's been played with since then, and it totally seems fine, so I think we're good. Then I added a huge dollop of hot glue for on top of the head and secured the wig for permanent. I was very thrilled with the end product and did a little bit of trimming to make her perfect, and then I sat there and played with her for a minute, because that's my right. The floral wire is doubled in her arms, tripled in her legs. She completely holds her position and doesn't crack, and she's the perfect size to go with this cute little nutcracker. This nutcracker is one from a set I bought at the craft store years ago, and so I just went through my old stash and found the one with the sword. I painted it as I would any other peg person, and I tried to paint it movie accurate, except I know that technically the Nutcracker has red pants and a red shirt in the movie, but the prince has a red shirt and white pants, and I thought that contrast was better, and it's my project, so he has white pants. My daughter loves the Nutcracker, and spoiler alert, he gets a glow up in the end, as all good Barbie movies do, and she was distressed the first time. She said, "Where's Nutcracker? What happened?" And I said, "Oh, he's just handsome now, girl." I mean, not that he wasn't. He is a conventionally attractive nutcracker, for sure. Anyway, I did my best to add his details because, of course, this nutcracker is a craft store nutcracker and not a Barbie Nutcracker TM nutcracker. And so I did my best, and then I actually decided to add some dazzle because I guess we were throwing movie accuracy out the window. But it's okay because it's shiny now and sparkly. That's what we're after. The best part of this nutcracker, of course, is that he actually works. His little jaw totally hinges, and my daughter's going to love that part. Nothing is quite as infuriating as pulling out your Christmas decorations and finding that the nutcrackers are fake. So now that Clara and Nutcracker can dance together, I'm going to play with them a little bit because it's my right, remember, and then we'll move on. Back from Purgatory is the Ballet Studio box. I decided to paint it this nice purple color because I liked it, even though probably ballet studios are usually white. I also did the hardwood floors by hand with popsicle sticks. Now, I totally did this the wrong way. I made sure that I had enough and that they all fit, and so that went totally fine, and then I went row by row, dry fitting them and then gluing them in. I made sure that the hardwood floors were staggered but not stacked, as a true master would. Unfortunately, I was a tad bit of a dingus because I totally should have done this on like a piece of paper or cardboard or something and then cut it out and fit it in. But as it stood, I did it all, and then I had to sand it while it was in the box glued down because it wasn't flat enough. But after I sat there with sandpaper for several hours, it looked great. It looked totally worn down in just the right way, and I even thought about putting some little pieces of tape to, mark positions, but I decided not to. It looks hardwood floory enough for me, I think. I continued painting the base color on the outside of the box, and now that I'm editing, I think maybe I should have done it more like brown and red, like really opera stagey, but I just continued with the cutie little nutcrackery purples and pinks. I then cut some holes in the stage scenery and sanded them nice and smooth. I even went through with my Dremel like a little dentist, smoothing all the edges until my husband had to leave because he was trying to study. I tried to cut the holes as perfectly as I could. They are sized to fit the trees and previous peg people that I've already made so that you can place them on the stage in position. And then, of course, I primed it so that I could put it back into Purgatory with the other boxes yet to be painted. You know those really expensive, like, European mice, and they're super cute, and they come with a dollhouse, but they're very expensive? Well, I have this friend on YouTube and TikTok. She makes these little mice, and they are, in my opinion, much cuter, and she makes even the little clothes for them. So I checked her website. Oh my gosh, the patterns were so cheap, and I bought them, and I decided to make a mouse king that was plush. He was going to be about 5 inches when he was finished, which was perfect to go along with the Clara and Nutcracker I already had. I used my leftover gray minky and some purple fabric and made sure the nap was laying in the correct direction before cutting out my pieces on the fold so that I'd have 2 of them, one for each side. I love sewing little pieces like this because you can lay out the paper and sew directly on it. Sewing little things can get hard because they might get stuck in your machine, but with the paper, I never have an issue. I adjust my stitch length to be really small, and that means I can get the curves better. It also means that the needle punctures the paper so often that it rips off extremely easily. A shorter stitch length does mean that you can't unpick things that you've done that you've messed up, but these pieces are so small I just cut another piece of fabric if I need to, and it's barely any waste. The hardest thing for me about sewing little pieces, and especially little pieces of minky, is that they get sucked up into the machine so often, but with this paper I didn't have any issues. I love to have paper on top. I cut off of the cute little seam allowance after sewing right directly on the line, and this is just printer paper. It's not special at all, and look how easily it comes off when your stitch length is so tiny. After all this, I had 2 arms, 2 legs, a body, and 2 earpieces. I clipped all the corners in preparation, and this pink stuff is the inside of the mouth of the frog poncho I made for Halloween, and I used it for the inside of the ears. It's flannel while the rest of the mouse is minky. Now, because this little mouse is so tiny, there are a couple of pieces that you have to sew on by hand, like the arms and the ears, but it was no big. There was plenty of space to turn them outside out really nice and then pinch them and add them. The mouse was coming together super quickly and super easily without a single hitch, and because I made it out of minky, it was very satisfying. I also like this pattern from Mama Rower Sews better than the European expensive ones because I think the nose is cuter. She always puts like velvet ribbon or something as the tail, which I think is cute, but for this one I wanted a really homemade look, so I used this cord that looks like a rope, and I put that in as the tail with a knot at the end. Then I stuffed all the little pieces with polyfill. You gotta be careful with polyfill because as soon as you buy one of those bags, you're gonna have it for the rest of your life. It has way more in there than you'll ever need. So if you wanted, you could even just stuff this with fabric scraps. I took my needle and thread and real quick sewed closed all of those holes that I used to stuff the arms and legs. I inserted the legs into the stuffed body and sewed across them to attach them. The pattern has an easier way to do this than by hand, but I was feeling good and I already had my needle and thread out, you know? I cannot stress enough how much fun I had making this little mouse. It was so satisfying. After I was finished, I held it in my little hand and it was just soft and yet heavy and yet delicate in all the right places. It was just so satisfying just to hold in my hand. I'm gonna make another one and put it in my pocket and touch it all the time. Anyway, the ears went on super easy too. You just kind of fold them in half a little bit and then tack them on. I totally worked just fine. And then I added 2 black beads for the eyes. The pattern calls for you to add on a nose and a mouth, and you could probably even do whiskers, and that would be really cute if you used some fishing line and tied a knot and made some whiskers. But I kind of liked how cutesy it looked without a nose and a mouth. So yeah, sure, he can't breathe, but whatever. I sewed the arms on by stabbing all the way through his torso, so sensitive viewers beware. And I went through a couple times to make sure it would stay nice and secure, but because this little guy's so small, the little entry points were so close together that the arms totally still pivoted. I'm telling you, I was satisfied as heck with this project. This little mouse, best part by far. I mean, heck, look how cute he is. He's just so sweetie. He's soft and firm, and he moves, and his little tail is nice and secure, and he's very, very cute. And when I was done with him and just sat there for a minute with him, with my creation, feeling in awe, I then decided to move on to the clothes made out of this purple fabric that I already had. I did struggle with the clothing a little bit more because I couldn't sew it on the paper and because I, full disclosure, did not follow any instructions. I figured I've made tiny pants before, I've made big pants before, I'll totally be fine, but I had never made tiny pants with a tail hole before, so I did struggle slightly a little bit. If I had a serger or a walking foot, it totally would have been better. If I had followed the instructions, it would have been better, but as it stood, I just did what I could and then doused it in fray check, and honestly, it's fine. It's fine. And in the end, it totally was all good because it fit him perfect anyway. I did a little better with the shirt because I had learned from my mistakes with the pants, and also I added these cute little arrows from the Mouse King's regalia. I just put those on by hand. They're made of felt. He looked very movie accurate by the end, except for the ugliness factor. I skipped that. Just made an executive decision to do that. And he looked adorable in the end. I sewed on this little crown. I got it in the miniatures section, and I sewed it on because I didn't want it to get lost. But the crown adds that little razzle-dazzle. He's just a mouse in a purple suit without it. His clothes close with little Velcro, and I made sure to break them in a little bit and play. But now the Mouse King and the Nutcracker can fight like they do in the movie, see? Actually, well, that's a little violent, so maybe they'll just kiss. After all the characters were done, I had no excuse but to paint the lid. It's very plain, it's just a lid. It's going to go underneath the set pieces. And like I said, maybe I could have painted them better colors, but I just decided to match the rest of the box. There isn't enough pink and blue and purple already in this world, and besides, the blue kind of looks a little bit like watery, maybe, underneath the set pieces. Then I made sure everything would fit before I decided to put it all together. In the meantime, I racked my brain on what I should paint around the edges. I could have done an audience maybe, but I decided ultimately to do the little fairies. In the movie, there are both winter fairies and spring fairies, and I decided to do my own renditions of both because they're kind of uggo in the movie, not gonna lie. I did 5 fairies on each of the 4 sides, and the opposite sides of each other are the matching sets. I did them in little ballerina poses, I think. Frankly, I haven't been in a ballet class since I was 5. But I thought they looked cute, and I made sure to add some glitter because, of course, it's like, glittery, fairy, sparkly dust. I have all sorts of glitter paints from the craft store, and I like to layer them like I'm doing a full bead of makeup on a box. I picked all of my favorite ballet-adjacent posters and then printed them off on just regular printer paper before I cut them out. They are tiny because they're going to be posters on the wall on the inside of the ballet studio, because if I had a ballet studio, I would put all of these cute little Russian paintings that I love so much, along with the movie posters for all of the best Barbie movies, which happen to be the dancing ones. Except Princess and the Pauper. It's the best one too, but no dancing. When I was little, sometimes if we had like a party or for birthdays or holidays or something, the best moms in the neighborhood would get together a bunch of wooden boxes and Mod Podge and paper and stuff, and we would Mod Podge the paper to the boxes, and that was like a highlight for me as a child. So I decided to use the same type of technique to put these posters on the wall. It's kind of like paste, but miniature and plastic. I've said it before and I'll say it again, Mod Podge is the aspirin of crafting. It works for everything, and it completely revolutionized everything crafting related. You put down one layer of Mod Podge, and then you stick the paper, just printer paper, mind you, onto it, and then you put another layer of Mod Podge, and when it dries, it's completely clear, completely flat, and completely stuck. I went around putting all the posters on the wall, thinking of my own childhood and making it as packed as I possibly could, because this ballet teacher, she's cool. And if you're in that group of girlies who always comes over to my house for a craft afternoon, get ready, because this is coming for you. We're doing this. Anyway, even though it's perfect, it's totally ballet studio-esque, right? There's like these posters, and then there's the bar and the hardwood floor. It's perfect. I love it. It looks great. And now the box stores the dolls, but it's also their ballet class. Finally, we work on the set piece. In the movie, there are the spring fairies and the winter fairies, and so I was going to do a spring one. This is mainly just green grass, and there's a little bit of a lake, because, there's like a lake in the movie. It's the best part. The rock monster. So cool. And I was going to do winter on the other side, but then I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would just be white. Lame. So I decided, upon further reflection, to do Candyland instead. In the movie, the candy villagers are low-key obnoxious, but it's totally okay because I think that the Candyland is a very versatile piece for play. I painted it a light frosting pink color because pink frosting is the best tasting frosting, obviously. And I added little circles that are the size of the cutouts, and those are going to be peppermints. I also did another set of circles, and I painted them with metallic and glitter to make them gumdrops. The set could be Candyland, the board game, or the Candy Village from the Nutcracker, or it could be Willy Wonka, or actually what I was thinking about was Shark Boy and Lava Girl, because, they go to the land of milk and cookies, and when I was doing this chocolate river, that's what I was thinking of. Although I did the rest of this mostly in paint, I did use markers on the peppermints, and I thought they looked stunning by the end. I only had a few colors, and I managed to make them look 3D, so I'll probably do a cute little vanity project and make a TikTok on how I did that, because, girl, they look incredible. Scrumptious. Now, when you do sprinkles, you can't just go balls to the wall and do any color you want. You have to know what color sprinkles actually are. And luckily for me, my mom loves to bake. You have to remember with sprinkles that you've got a dark green, a light, bright blue, you've got a hot pink, a red, a yellow, and a white. Those are the classic Rainbow Jimmy's colors, and that's how you make it look like sprinkles. In the end, I sealed them also with polyacrylic so they'd be nice and kid safe, and they are flippable and totally playable. I'm really pleased with how this works. The set piece fits perfectly onto the stage and can be flipped into any orientation. It also happens to fit perfectly inside the box on the bottom. Some of the holes are even in couples so that you can make the pegs dance together. In the end, I sealed everything with a once over of my favorite sealer for kids' toys, which is polyacrylic. I also took the extra wrapping paper that I used off of the mirror. It was masking it this whole time. It was masking it. And since the bar is already installed, I can go ahead and attach this lid right to the box using toothpicks through the holes that I previously vacated with my clippers. The hinge works perfectly, and because all those pesky dividers are gone, all of my weird shaped dolls totally fit. I've got my Nutcracker and my Clara doll, she's posable, and then to make this mouse stand up, I didn't put a paint can there, you didn't see anything. They stand perfect on their own, look how cute they are. In the end, I do love how the fairies look around the edges, and I really love how the inside is a ballet studio and the outside is a stage. I think it's perfect and impeccable. And now that they fit all together, I'm gonna take this upstairs and show my kid, and she's gonna love it for about 2 weeks.